Hey everyone, what is up? And welcome back to another episode of the Lifestyle Lifters Show. I am, as of recording this, less than 2 weeks out from my photo shoot. So I thought it'd be a good time because it's something I'm really focusing now is dropping body fat and looking and feeling your best coming into the summertime. I usually like to break my year down into different cycles where typically I will do some element of a gaining phase from like September right through to Christmas. I might do a maintenance phase after Christmas to try and drop off some of the pounds, maybe up until roughly Easter time. I might do another bit of a lean bulk before kind of doing a cut coming into summer and maintenance during summer and repeating that cycle. As of now, we are in April 2023. This will be out in the beginning of May 2023. I am in my cut and my deficit phase and just really trying to lean out and get as shredded as possible effectively. And I've been here just over 2 weeks in Dubai, and I must say I'm seeing big notable changes, and I want to help you do the same. So let us dive straight into it. If you want to look and feel your best for this year, we're going to cover a few main topics. And the first thing is the difference between losing weight and losing body fat. So I had a client, Gina, and she's just completed her initial 12 weeks with us and she's continuing on. And in her testimonial post, she said at the end, for anyone thinking of working with Adrian, first, the big thing I would recommend you to do is to not only not only take your weight, but also to use pictures because otherwise it can be sometimes disheartening and deceiving. So, for example, she lost, which is good now, she lost like 5 kilos over 12 weeks. Typically, the target we have for women are between zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.6 kilos lost per week. So she actually was in that threshold. But the biggest changes for her was in her body composition and her before and after pictures. And that is because your weight, it's just a number on the scale. I'm not saying your weight doesn't matter. I mean, I don't get it. Some people they weigh their food, they weigh out everything that they're going to eat, but they don't actually weigh themselves. Okay, your weight does matter. However, it doesn't paint the full picture. Whereas your body fat, it's the ratio of muscle to fat that you have. In other words, how much of me is useful muscle that I want to hold on to, and how much of me is useless fat that I want to get rid of. And it's just important if you're on a transformation journey that you not only track your weight, but you also track your body fat. And there's a few different ways that you can do that. So there's non-standardized way, which is probably the easiest for 95% of people listening. Just take photos. Take photos. Same time, same place, same week, same lighting, just so for consistency there. Just so you can see a carryover. Of course, weigh yourself too at the same time, same place, on the same scale, and I'd even recommend weighing yourself. I don't have a scales here at the moment in Dubai. I'm actually not sure on my weight. It's definitely dropped since I've arrived, but I used to weigh myself back home pretty much every day. And the reason I do that is because your weight can actually fluctuate daily on a basis. I remember once my weight after my photo shoot, the first time I did it, it went up by 4 kilos in one day, in one freaking day. Other times my weight might have gone down 2 kilos overnight, and you might thinking, God, everything is going good. And then the following day it's up like 1.3 kilos, and you're kind of back to where you started. So I would actually weigh yourself or recommend weighing yourself more than once a week. So you get a rough weekly estimate of your weight and where it is and how much it's going down or increasing or decreasing. But the first thing is there is a difference between losing weight and losing body fat. And lifestyle lifters, anyone lifting or anyone listening, not lifting, even though I'm sure we're lifting as well. If you want to improve your body composition, it's the ratio of muscle to fat that you have. So be freaking regimented on taking progress pictures because they are very beneficial for you to see how things are actually looking. As Gina said, listen to her, you can lose weight or your weight can stay the same, but your body fat and how you look can be completely different. So absolutely understand that difference by taking both photos and weighing yourself. If you wanted something more standardized, my client Ian just finished up. He got a DEXA scan at the gym that he was doing, and it gave him everything from his body composition or his body fat percentage to his estimated caloric needs. And to be fair, it was actually quite accurate. It had him at like 3,000, whereas he was eating maybe 3,500 with us, but he was doing a bit of a lean bulk. So I'd say that was his maintenance calories. So it probably wasn't far off there. it got him at about 12% body fat or so, which I would have agreed with there. So there are kind of these tools that you can implement as well. Some people like to do it at the start when they might do like an 8, 10, 12 week program and then do it again at the finish so you can see where things are at. But at the very minimum, I would say pictures plus weight for your measurements. And then if you wanted something more standardized, like a DEXA scan, tape measurements, even calipers, and so on, you could also incorporate those. Okay, so once we know how we're tracking our progress by losing body fat and knowing the difference between losing body fat and losing weight, next thing is a caloric deficit. And for some people, a sustainable approach, and for others, you can kind of go more advanced and more rigorous, depending on your preference and depending on the time frame. The big thing here with your calorie deficit is you got to map out how much time do you have, and the longer you give yourself, the less intensive that you need to be with it. Because, for example, I did have a client, Sean, last year. We worked together and he wanted to look his best for a wedding. And his approach was he wanted to go, he gave himself loads of time. He gave himself 14 weeks, which is definitely more than enough time to really dramatically change your body composition and look much better. But he wanted a more aggressive approach, which I actually we did an offer. We bumped up his calories initially to kind of build up his metabolism, and then we did only a cut for 7 weeks, the final 7 weeks. But you don't need to go as aggressive if you're giving yourself more time, because the more time that you have, the more sustainable that you can implement it. And you could even get to a point where you're looking and you're feeling your best 2 weeks out from the holiday, from the event. And at the last 2 weeks, it's like it's less stressful in the body. And you could even go into like a bit of a maintenance phase there. So a calorie deficit, regardless, is required to drop body fat. We all do know that. The extent of the percentage for your calorie deficit, it's going to be dependent on you and your goals. For me at the moment, I'm actually going down more of the aggressive route because I know I'm only going to be in a deficit for 4 weeks. I'm 2.5, 2 weeks in at this stage. Um, a bit more than 2 weeks in at this stage, because simply the reason being I'm in Dubai only initially for 8 weeks and I might be moving back over then in September. So I don't want to be in a deficit for my full 8 weeks here. There's, some nice food, some nice restaurants that I want to try out. So I kind of been more strict to myself for these first 4 weeks where I'm in a calorie deficit. Like I'm at 2,200 odd calories a day, which is a calorie deficit of over 1,000 for me, which is 33% of, yeah, it will be 33% calorie deficit there, which typically for my clients, I'd only recommend like a 15%, in that 10 to 20% range, typically around the 15% range. But again, everyone is different. The more time that you do have, the more aggressive or the less aggressive you can be. The less time you have, well, then you got to be a bit more aggressive. For me, I don't find this too aggressive. Before when I was doing a photo shoot, God, I was down like 1,500 calories for the final 10 days. I'm definitely not going down there again. I don't care how much better I might look. It freaking jacked up my hormones, metabolic damage. Oh, don't talk libido, sex drive, everything there. When you look at bodybuilders, I really have to admire them because what they go through, what they put their bodies through to get into that shape, and the potential hormonal impacts it has on them, that can take a while for them to reverse out of. And just when I did my shoot 2 years ago before my sister's wedding, I probably didn't give myself enough time and I went too aggressive. And with that, then I found that my hormone, my testosterone, all of those were down, which is natural, but it just took me a while to build it back up again. So this time it's going to be much, much more sustainable. Even if it is a case that I'm not going to look as lean, I'd rather still be lifting relatively all right in the gym and looking still, pretty lean without going too overboard and too drastic with it. So calorie deficit is required to lose fat, whether you want to go aggressive for a short period of time or whether you want to go sustainable, that is up to you. I'm kind of going more in the aggressive route, but I know it's only for 4 weeks, but it's not too aggressive. It's not too extreme either. So how do you know if you're in a calorie deficit? It's very, very simple. If you just go online, you go on to TDE calculator, total daily estimated energy allowance calculator, and you'll be able to see there roughly, okay, what are your maintenance calories? From your maintenance calories, subtract that by, we'll say, 10 to 20%, and that will give you your calorie deficit. For example, if your maintenance calories come in at 2,000 calories and you're in a 20% calorie deficit, 20% of 2,000 will mean you take off 400 calories and you'll be eating at 1,600. A 10% calorie deficit, you'd be taking off 200 calories and you'd be eating at 1,800. So again, that would all depend on the time. Typically, what I like to do with our clients is I'll start them out high initially, and I would gradually drop them as they kind of adhere and they get more used to the calorie deficit. So let's just say someone with the maintenance calories of 2,000 might drop them down to 1,700 initially. Okay, 300, 15% calorie deficit. And then as they become more comfortable, you might drop them by 50 to 100 per week coming into the final few weeks. I find that approach typically works best for many because it gives you a chance to kind of see, okay, this is the amount of food that I can eat at 1,700. And then once you get comfortable at 1,700, is there any way we can do a bit of a drop and cut you down that bit more so we can get that bit leaner? But regardless of whatever your goals are, if you want to drop body fat and want to lose weight, you need to be in a calorie deficit. And as you heard Joseph say last week on the podcast, if people are saying, I'm in a calorie deficit, but I'm not losing weight, then by its nature, you're not in a deficit. Because a big thing people do not understand is as your weight decreases, as you lose weight, naturally enough, your maintenance calories might decrease also. So somebody working with me who comes and starts with a maintenance calories of 2,000, their maintenance calories might be 1,800 after 12 weeks. For instance, when I did my photo shoot, my maintenance calories were 3,300, but I finished my maintenance calories were 2,900. Now, had I gone back straight up to maintenance there from a calorie deficit and say, okay, I'm going to go straight back up to 3,300, I would have actually been in a calorie surplus and would have gained weight. So that's a common mistake people make when they want to reverse out of their diet. They go straight back up to how they were eating previously, not knowing that typically your BMR and your maintenance calories, it actually does reduce as you go in a dieting phase. Okay, so um, just important notes there to be mindful of. Look, tracking your calories in. Technically, it's not essential, but it is advisable for many people here. Just because, look, you can get to a point where you're at nutritional mastery, which I call, which some of my clients would say it's a point where they're able to maintain their body weight without needing to track food, and that should be the goal for everyone. That you shouldn't be not calling a slave essentially to MyFitnessPal, where you have to input every single thing in. Well, you have to earn the right to get there. And if you've never tracked your calories before and you're serious about dropping body fat, it's probably beneficial to do it for at least 4 weeks straight and just go hard at it. And you'll have a good idea of portion sizes. Okay, this is what a 500 calorie meal looks like. This is what 40 grams of protein looks like. This is what a 200 grams of potato looks like. This is what 50 grams of oats looks like. Typically, if I eat these meals on these days, because I might eat the same Monday through Friday, which a lot of people do, I'm going to be ingesting roughly this number of calories. That's not a bad starting point. Once you transition out of that and once you get used to it, for some of our longer term clients, I might just ask them, give me one weekday and one weekend. Let's track food on a Monday so we can see that things are, in a good place for the rest of the week. And let's have a look at the weekend as well, just to make sure that we're not over consuming. Because typically, when people are out of schedule, they have more free time. That can also lead to more boredom eating. So we want to avoid that as well. But regardless, being in a calorie deficit, you technically do not have to track your calories. But I think if you haven't ever done it before, I would highly recommend doing it. And my preferred app is MyFitnessPal. On the note of tracking calories, think of your calories as this is what I always say to my clients: think of your calories as a bank or a budget. And I like looking at the calories from a weekly instead of a daily point of view. So if your calorie deficit is 2,000 calories times seven, that's 14,000 calories a week. I had this conversation with one of our members, Lloyd, last week because it was Easter weekend and he had planned on going home for Sunday roast with the parent or with his family. And he also planned on eating an Easter egg. So we simply just advised him to lower his calories during the week, provided that he didn't go over them come end of week. So if you look at your calories from a weekly instead of a daily point of view, it's much, much more comforting and it makes you feel like less of a failure. Like you're at 2,000 calories in your deficit, but if you eat 3,000 calories in one day, but then you save those 1,000 calories over 6 other days, you're still in the same point come end of week. Whereas if you just look at it from a day by day point of view, it can make you feel like a bit of a failure if you're in the red zone of MyFitnessPal and you're 200 calories over your technical allowance. it can sometimes kind of get you in the mind frame that, God, I'm 200 calories over, I may as well keep going, which, as we know, that is what promotes binge eating, which we do not want as well. So being in a calorie deficit, that's why I like looking at them from a weekly instead of a daily point of view. And I like to give my clients a range. So a typical range might be a rest day versus training day calories. And as you can imagine, your training day calories are typically higher because your activity and your expenditure is higher as well. Also, just given a range, again, going back to the point there, it makes you feel like less of a failure. If you're at 2000 calories, your range might be 1900 to 2100, meaning some days you're less hungry, you can say at 1900. Other days, when you're for a leg day, hard session, or you're just feeling that bit more hungry, you might go to 2100. But it just gives you that bit more kind of comfort there, so it's less rigid. Okay, so once we're in a calorie deficit again, it's up to you to decide whether you want to go rigorous or sustainable. The next thing is the goal of being in a calorie deficit, I always say, is to eat as much food as possible while maintaining your muscle and staying as full as possible. And that is where size matters, everyone. Size freaking does matter. And what I'm talking about, of course, is volume eating. Okay, of the most satiating foods, the three, well, foods that slash minerals. If you want to stay fuller for longer in a deficit, there's freaking nothing worse than going to bed hungry. Okay. Protein, fiber, and water. They're going to be a big three. Protein, fiber, and water. Protein, fiber, and water. So source of protein. Your source of protein when you're in a deficit become more important. Okay. So for example, you could probably get away with having if you were at a Vulcan diet, like Ian, who would have finished up work with me, you can get away with having roast lamb on a Sunday, which would be, relatively high fat meat there. And you might consume 600 calories there easily from, a couple of 100 grams. But if you're in a deficit, it's probably you could better use those 600 calories from lamb if you maybe got 200 calories worth of lean chicken breast for 40 grams of protein. So your source of protein become more important the deeper into your deficit that you become. And that is where, lean source of protein in particular are going to be helpful. What are lean source of protein? It's your typical white meat. So chicken and turkey, two very good options. If you want red meat, make sure you're getting lean steak mince with less than 5% fat. Again, I wouldn't be going for the fattier cut of 10% or above. More calories, more fat means, you've just less wiggle room to play around with. Also, then egg whites are a big one. Probably the leanest source of protein out there, egg whites on top of white fish. So cod, pangasis, very, very good lean source of fish. Salmon is great as well. Just salmon will be a bit fattier and a bit higher in calories. So again, the deeper you are into your cut, in your calorie deficit, the smarter your food options gotta be. Fiber then. So fiber that would typically just be veggies. And eat typically for the most part, just eat an unlimited amount of veg. And particularly green leafy veg, the likes of spinach, the likes of kale, broccoli, all of those foods. Green beans, very, very good as well. It's your starchier veg that are, if you really want to dive into it and go like that extra 5%, it's your starchier veg, which would be the likes of butternut squash, peas, and sweet corn. They would typically be much higher in carbohydrates and calories. And for me at the moment, I'm doing a cut, and I like to, just to keep it simple for me, I'm eating a lot of frozen veg. And I'll also buy some, broccoli and cauliflower too, because they're very low in calories. But when I'm buying frozen bread veg now, I will not buy a big mix kind of bag of peas and sweet corn just because per 100 grams, there's maybe 80 odd calories there compared to like broccoli, maybe 30 odd calories. And look, the deeper you are, this is going deep now, but the deeper you are into your cut, your food choices become more important. But regardless, the goal of being in a calorie deficit should be eat as much food as possible while staying within your limit. And that's where a good source of protein, as mentioned there, and on top of fiber and water intake, big one. A lot of people mistake being dehydrated with just being thirsty. So keep yourself hydrated, drink lots of water. A typical target might be your body weight in kilos times 30 to 50. So if you weigh 80 kilos times 30, that's 2.4 liters a day. Times 50, that'll be 4 liters a day. In that range, again, like with your calories, the more you exercise, the more you probably need to drink water to replenish any lost fluids there. Um, and just going on food choice as well, again, it becomes more important. I know I'm repeating myself when you are in a cut. But I don't understand how some people in a cut, you can, as good and all as it tastes, you can really justify giving yourself 300 calories off your 1700 calorie daily allowance to peanut butter. I mean, whoever ate 300 calories of peanut butter and felt stuffed after it? Whereas you could actually have a salad with 150 grams of chicken breast and some veggies there for the same amount, and you would be so much fuller. So just get into volume eating, okay? Eating as much food as possible with as few calories as possible. And that is where lean protein sources, fiber, and water would really come into it. Okay? And that is it on the nutrition side for looking and feeling your best. Let's go on to the training. And progressive strength training is next in mind. And I say progressive because strength training by its nature, it should be progressive. Otherwise, you're probably just going to plateau and stay the same. And the story I'll give is I was just having a consult with a girl last week. Her name was Orla, and she got a program at the start of the pandemic off an online coach. 3 years later, she's still following more or less the same thing. And on one hand, I told her, I really do admire you. Like, because following the same plan for 3 years, more or less on or off, obviously a bit of deviance here and there. Even another guy, he worked with a coach 9 years ago. 9 years ago, I spoke to him last week. And he'd been more or less doing the same thing since, swapping a few things around here and there. Everything works, but nothing works forever. And if there was just one program you could follow for the rest of your life, well, you could, everyone would just be doing the same thing and you'd be getting amazing results, but that's not how it works. And your body would adapt to whatever, strain and stress you're putting on it. And if you consistently do the same thing over and over again, you will get to a point where you plateau. So that is where progressive strength training comes in. How can you progress? You can add more weight to the bar. You can do more sets. Last week you did 4 by 8. This week, or last week you did 3 sets of 8. This week you do 4 sets of 8. You can do more reps. So 3 sets of 8 last week, 3 sets of 10 this week. Reduce your rest period. So you were gassed after that set of deadlifts last week, and it took you 5 minutes to recover. This week, after 3 minutes, you're feeling good, you're getting ready, you're back at it again. That's another form of progression, or just improving your technique as well. A very underrated way. But regardless, your training should be progressive in nature, because if it's not, people saying I'm in a plateau, but are you actually pushing yourself hard enough in the gym? And your performance will taper off a bit as you're in a calorie deficit. Because when you think about it, when you're eating less calories than you're consuming, recovery becomes more of an issue. And that's where you got to train smarter and not harder. And you want to be doing the minimum effective dose of volume to get you the best possible results. But regardless, you should always aim for your training to be progressive in nature. So, how many times a week should you train? I mean, I would usually say three is a very good start point if you really want to optimize. Two for maintenance, three for growth, four for really pushing it. Okay. How you split up your training phase and your training split, it's going to be completely dependent on your goals. It's going to be dependent on how many days a week that you can actually train. The best training split always starts with how many days a week you can train. I spoke with this in previous podcasts. If you can do 4 days a week, I might recommend an upper lower split, or something like a push pull legs full body. If you can do 3 days a week, I might recommend three full body workouts, or something like upper, lower, and full. If you can only do 2 days a week, I'd be recommending full body. So again, it depends on your own approach, and it depends on your actual lifestyle and your schedule. For me at the moment, my split is I'm doing a push pull legs, upper lower for strength, and I'm doing two cardio sessions, which I'll talk about next. That is what I'm able to adhere to. And being honest, I enjoy the training. Okay. There's certain things that other people love that I freaking hate. But for me, training, it's a form of therapy. I do it first thing in the morning. So I like to do my deep work, which is like podcast content, etc. Then I will go and train, and mentally I'll just feel much, much better. I'll get back at to work again. So I always do some form of movement, some form of exercise daily, because at the moment I'm in a position where I can fit it into my schedule. Maybe down the line that won't always be the case, but as of now it is. You got to decide for you what is something you are 90% confident you can adhere to. If you say you want to work out 6 times a week, but you're 50% confident, well, then maybe scale that back to four. If your confidence in yourself and your own approach goes from 50% to 90%. Okay, you want to be confident that you can actually adhere to this long term, and pick your number of days based on that. Regardless, strength training is important. And, when people say they want to tone up, toning up is effectively you want to build muscle and lose body fat. That's effectively what it means. So toning up, you build muscle by what? By lifting weights. You lose body fat by doing what we spoke about previously, being in a calorie deficit. So just making sure you're doing both of those and staying consistent. So with my training at the moment, as I said, I'm doing leg day on a Monday, I'm doing a pull day on a Tuesday. I like to start off the week with legs to get the hardest freaking thing done first. I always actually used to do push before pull, but now I do a pull day before push, and I find that my shoulders feel much, much better going into my push session. I typically do a leg day on a Thursday, and then I'll do cardio on a Friday and a Sunday, and a upper body workout in a Saturday in between. That is how I'm kind of working it at the moment. And it's going well for me. I'm enjoying it, and that is my approach. You got to decide what your approach is. Okay, with your training, finally, a lot of people go into the gym and look, your main lift is like doing bicep curls. Now, if you're doing an arm day, fair enough. But for a lot of people, they just they do the most random exercises in the most random of order, where, typically when you're fresh is at the start of your workout is where you should be doing your bigger and more taxing movements. And that is where compound lifts come in. The likes of your deadlifts, your squats, your bench press, your overhead press, your chin ups, your barbell rows, etc. Always try to start off in general with your bigger, more taxing lift, and then you do your biceps, your triceps, your lateral raises towards the end because they're less technical and they require less concentration than doing a big, heavy compound lift. So just make sure your training is relatively structured and you're following a program too. Okay. So once you have your progressive strength training, next thing is cardio. And I like to classify myself as a hybrid athlete in the sense that if someone asked me, do you want to do a 10K run? I'll be able to do it. If someone said, do you want to do a deadlift session? I'll be able to put up a decent amount of weight there. Yesterday I did 180 for five, which is all right. Not my best in the hex bar, but considering I'm in a cut there as well, it's not too bad. If someone then said that, do you want to do a hard grueling conditioning session where we're doing intervals on the treadmill? I'd like to think I'll be able to do a decent enough session there, or a CrossFit style one as well. Now, if someone said, do you want to compete in bodybuilding and go up in stage, I'm not going to win that. I'd like to think I'm a few weeks away from being, would say, a photo shoot lean. I'd like to think that I can always run a 5 or 10K at any one point, and that I can put up decent numbers in the gym as well. But I know I'm never going to be an elite powerlifter. I know I'm never going to be an elite bodybuilder. I know I'm never going to be an elite runner. So I'm kind of like a jack of all trades and a master of none. And you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way, because I feel two people are too out of balance with their training, and they're just getting their training from one form of one style of training. So some people, and this was me in the past, I was overly dominant on the strength side and all gym, 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 and no cardio. In the past, I might have been too dominant in the cardio and no gym work, but I'm just getting that fine balance now where I'm lifting weights, I'm doing cardio, I'm doing steady state, I'm doing interval, higher intensity work. I'm doing a bit of mobility work there as well to make sure my joints are healthy. And that is what a hybrid athlete essentially is. Okay. And I think it's a good approach for probably everyone listening to here. I don't have too many bodybuilders who just solely listen to the show, but if you're not hoping to compete in any field, I think it's nice being able to look lean and look shredded, but I think it's also nice being able to walk up a flight of stairs without being out of breath, or being able to carry the shopping bags out into the car without being absolutely gassed, or being able to go on a hike on a Sunday with your friends or with your family without having to take, regular interval stopping breaks there, or just to do a 5K race, a local 5K race that's on. And that is where hybrid training for me, for my approach comes in. And with hybrid training does come cardio. So the different forms of cardio, probably the most underrated and the most beneficial form is just increasing and setting yourself a step count. Okay, having a good step count, I mean, it's less tax on the body than running. It's very effective in burning calories, and it's just a nice, simple thing to do. It can be hard sometimes to gear yourself up to do a 5K run or do a gym workout. But most people listening, if you're ever feeling, if you're lacking motivation, most people can just do a 5 minute walk. The entry level is so small there. Just put on your shoes and off you go. So walking is one thing. At the moment, my step count is probably at 15,000-ish a day, just because I'm walking a lot over here to and from the gym. But I already set myself a minimum standard of 10,000 a day. And how I like to do that, I spoke with this to actually, it was Seamus. Seamus is on his just his second week there, and he's working from home like myself. He's a desk worker, busy guy, runs his own business. And just one thing that he found challenging was keeping his step count. I gave him a target of roughly 8,000 a day, and he found that some days, he's looking at his watch in the evening and it might only be 2,000. So I just gave him the recommendation yesterday to microdose the walking throughout the day. Go for a 5 or 10 minute walk in the morning before you eat anything. And then go for a 5 or 10 minute walk after every single meal. So a 10 minute walk after breakfast, that's 1,000 steps. 10 minute walk after lunch, another 1,000 steps. 10 minute walk in the morning, you're at 3,000. 10 minute walk after dinner, 4,000. And then, you'd be walking around during the day anyways. And then come 6 o'clock, you could be at already 7,000 odd steps. And it could just be a case of going for another 10 or 15-minute walk to get your 75 or 8,000 steps there. Regardless, though, walking is a universal exercise I feel everyone should be doing more of. Regarding then cardio as well. So, look, if you have performance-based goals and you're an athlete, or you want to run a 5K, you probably want to be doing some element of steady state cardio and practicing what you preach there. So if you're running a 5K race and you want to get better at running, the best thing you can do is run more. So incorporate that into your training. You can also do the bodybuilding approach, which is more low intensity, steady state. The benefit of low intensity, steady state is it is less taxing on the body. It might be like, 45-minute walk in the treadmill at a 2% incline at, maybe 6, 7 kilometers an hour. Um, the downside is it takes longer than doing HIIT training, which I'll go on to next. So HIIT training by its nature, it's high intensity interval training. And true HIIT training is something like 10 seconds on and 40 seconds off or 50 seconds off. A lot of people think they're doing HIIT training, when in reality they're just doing low intensity, long duration training, i.e., they're doing burpees for 45 seconds on, 15 seconds off. Mountain climbers, jumping jacks, at that 45, 15 seconds, no one in their right mind is able to maintain burpees at a high intensity for 45 seconds. That is not high intensity interval training. High intensity means you're maxing out, you're giving it your all, you're resting, you're recovering, and you're going again. So a good example would be an assault bike, where if you go 10 seconds really hard and 40 or 50 seconds coasting and repeat that for 10 minutes. That's only 100 seconds, but it's 100 seconds of hard freaking work there. All right. But a lot of different ways you can do cardio. At the moment, for me, what I'm doing is I'm doing one steady state day where it's like a 6K run on the treadmill, 15 minutes on the elliptical, and one more kind of higher intensity interval based day where it's like 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. And then sprinting, which is like 12 seconds on, 15 seconds on, and 45 seconds off. So again, that's how I'm doing at the moment. I'm mixing high intensity and low intensity. And then my steady state, that's just through my walking to and from the gym in the morning, etc. You decide what works best for you, but cardio is not essential for losing fat, but for your health and for your longevity, really important. They did a study, and endurance athletes typically live 7 years longer by having that good cardiovascular base than, strength training counterparts. So what I would say is if you just analyze your current training and are you overly dominant in one area? Ideally, you want to be doing some form of cardio, some form of strength, and some form of mobility work if health and longevity is your goal. If you just want to look jacked and get lean, you don't care about, living as long as possible, well, then you could just get away with doing strength work. But if you're in this for the long game and you're a lifestyle lifter, I would recommend incorporating some element of strength, cardio, and conditioning slash or strength, cardio, and mobility work there. Okay. And that is it for this week's episode. So just to recap, if you want to look and feel your best coming into the summertime or just whatever time of year, know the difference between losing weight and losing body fat. And being in a calorie deficit is obviously important to drop body fat there. Protein, fiber, and water intake to help keep you fuller for longer. Progressive strength training. Okay. Everything works, but nothing works forever. Remember the example I used with Orla there? following the same plan for 3 years. That was the main reason why she plateaued. So change things up consistently. And then cardio, so low intensity steady state. You can do high intensity interval. You can do just tempo work, which I'm doing, or just a combination of all three there. But regardless, the big thing is you stay consistent and you adhere to it. And don't let one bad day turn into a full, a week off. Morris, one of our members, he's flying at the moment. He's 7 weeks in, he's down 6 kilos. But he knew in advance he was going away Easter weekend. And he said, there'll be pints involved, there'll be food eaten. And he gained like 2 kilos, I think he said, over the course of 3 days. Now it's gone down again. I told him like a lot of that was water weight. But what he didn't do was he didn't just arrive back home on Tuesday and say, I'm going to write the rest of the week off. Got a freaking workout in. After the bank holiday, he got his 3 sessions in, his third session on Sunday. And now this week starting, we're in a much, much better place mentally and physically. Just understand that being consistent is the most important thing. And you will get there, wherever there is for you. You will get there once you do not quit. So don't give yourself permission to quit. I'll end on this note, and hopefully it will help inspire people that if you're going through a tough time, freaking keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. I was on the treadmill the last day and I was running and I didn't feel like doing it. It was just one of those days where, God, there's a million and one different things that I'd love to be doing, but I'm gonna choose to do this instead. And on the treadmill, I was listening to a podcast with Alex Hormozy and Chris Williamson, and they said something really possible, or really, really that resonated with me. And it was, this is the point where most people quit. When it gets hard, this is the point where most people quit. So when you're in your calorie deficit and you're feeling a bit hungry, and someone asks you, do you want to go for pizza? Or you open up the fridge or the freezer and you see the Ben& and Jerry's ice cream there. That's the point where most people give in and they quit and they binge eat and they just say it's not for them. But if you can delay that gratification and just stay consistent and stay focused on your goals, it'll be much, much more rewarding for you in the long run. So outwork that self-doubt that you have in yourself. Don't quit when times get tough. Quit when you're finish up when you're done. When you're finished the diet, give yourself a deadline. You're going to have some fun afterwards. You're going to reverse diet out of it and you're going to maintain that. But up until then, there is an element of sacrifice. And once you do not quit and once you stay consistent, you will get there eventually. All right. So that is all for this week. Signing out. If you need a bit more help, a bit more support with this, there's a few freebies that I can offer you. So in the link in the bio, I would attach, if you want my 7-day fat loss accelerator. Some of our members, no word of a lie, have lost 4 kilos inside 7 days just from following that approach. If you want a peak performance nutrition manual and seeing what a typical healthy living lean cookbook looks like, I'll also post that in the show notes. If you would like a sample of what a 3-day training hybrid split might look like, I'll also post that in the show notes. Or if you want everything there customized and implemented for you to take all of the guesswork out of it, so you don't need to be going on to Google, to bodybuilding.com, to Instagram for inspiration, and you have a coach there you want to reach out to instead, who has coached over 500-600 clients nearly at this stage. Just fill out my application form. I'll also put that in the bio if you want more one-to-one support, and I look forward from hearing from you. Regardless, I hope you got value from the show. And the last thing I would ask is, look, I do not run ads for podcasts. I do not I don't run ads. I do very, very little promotion with this. The only way this podcast has grown to so far is by listeners like you tapping that 5-star review and sharing the word, spreading the word with your friend. So I would really appreciate if you got value from the show, you shared the show with your friend or tag me on your IG stories. I'm at Mac Lifestyle Fitness. That's MC Lifestyle Fitness on Instagram. Tag me, let me know what you enjoyed about it, and I will give you a shout out also on the podcast. All right. That is all for this week's show. Check the show notes for more, and I hope you enjoyed this week's episode.